Welcome to the Bell Cow Author Roundup podcast, where we celebrate Minnesota's incredible fiction authors and the stories that make our literary scene so vibrant. I'm Rob Jung.
And I'm Michael MacBride. Together, we're the team behind Bell Cow Productions and the Bell Cow Catalog, a digital catalog designed to connect Minnesota authors with readers, libraries, and indie bookstores.
The catalog will be heading to all 377 Minnesota libraries, 80 plus indie bookstores, plus those in border cities such as Sioux Falls, Fargo, Superior, and La Crosse.
And now with this podcast, we get to bring those amazing voices to life. Every episode features one of our herd members talking about their books, their writing journey, and the stories behind the stories.
And before we start, let us apologize for all the cow-related puns you're about to hear.
All right, let's dig in.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Bell Cow Author Roundup. Today we have with us Peggy Scholberg, who has written a fascinating book about women in World War II. Peggy, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I love this focus of women and girls in the war. It seems like there have been a couple books written about like nurses and things like that, and I'm really interested to see where this goes. So
Okay.
I'm curious, what got you into this topic?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Well, what happened is I recently retired, and in my closet, I had my mother's original typewritten pages of this book. She served in the military, actually in the Army overseas in World War II. And about the time I was born, which was a number of years ago, she actually typed up her experiences and she called it a story. She called it fiction, changing some names to protect the innocent, as she said. And I can show you that right here. Because I'm in my home, I have it. This is one book.
Oh my gosh.
And this is the whole thing right here.
Oh my gosh.
It makes a nice doorstop. So it's so anyway, this had been in my closet, and I started reading some World War II fiction books and was getting very interested. My husband's always been interested in World War II. And it occurred to me that I had a story in my closet. So I pulled it out, and I'm not a writer, pharmacist by training. And I was able to take some online courses and try to figure out what goes into a novel. And I was able to shorten it and get it published locally out of Burnsville. So I went with Kirkhouse Publishing. So it's her story, really, but I'm the one that got it published.
You brought it over the finish line. Well done.
That's exactly right.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kirkhouse is one of the sponsors of the Bell Cow.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So we are always happy to see Kirkhouse authors on our podcast and in our catalog.
They've been just great. I just can't say enough good things. I'm not sure this would have happened without their help. So yeah.
So are there plans, now that you've made this a big success, are there plans for more stories from the pen of Peggy Scholberg?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I don't consider myself an author, but I guess technically I am now that I've done this. But what's happened is I tell people I only have one mother. Anyway, I have been very interested in World War II, my husband and I both, and we've now gone on 4 trips to Europe to visit the places both of my parents had served. I'm getting more involved with the the Minnesota History Center. They have a World War II roundtable group, and one of the things I've done is I'm helping out with what they call student outreach. They give presentations to students. That's just about any age, really. And so I've been doing some of those presentations and learning more about World War II. And it's definitely a story type situation. So I am involved. I'm writing the speeches that I give. And so I'm still writing some different things, but I don't see another book coming out.
Gotcha. Interesting. So how your background, you said, was in pharmacy.
Yep.
Had you ever dabbled in any writing before this at all? Like even short stories or poetry or anything back in the years previous?
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. Well, there was one thing I could do is I did recall that I was quite capable of doing a research project. So I guess I kind of like the nonfiction. I like the facts. I do well with facts and numbers and all of that. And I can put together a research project. That gave me some confidence, knowing I could do that. Well, my mother had the story going, and she was quite a storyteller. And I do think I can put together some stories, but it's not my knack. And when I meet authors, they say I have to write, and I think I don't get it. But I do admire authors even more now that I've gone through this process and I understand somewhat about what they do and have, again, more respect than ever for authors.
Well, you said you shortened the book
Yes,
from what your mother had written.
yes.
So my guess is that there are some really interesting parts that you cut out that could be the kernel for a sequel to this. That
I like where you're
might
going with
be
this.
might be might not take you all that much creative brain power to sort of expound on some of the parts you didn't write about.
Well, that's an interesting angle, Rob. But if I were to show you some of the things I cut out, you might change your mind on that. She had some pretty lengthy descriptions of things like army barracks that was better off shortened. She had long descriptions of the Christmas Eve services at the cathedral, and I
Okay.
really shortened the sermon from the pastor that night. And so there's some things that I have to say. Uh, I guess there is one other thing. She had more romances, and a lot of them didn't go well. And I thought a couple of them were plenty for the reader. So I kind of I like what I cut out. And
Okay.
so to answer your question, I don't think there's another story there. I wanted to bring out the stories that were there and not get people bogged down. I tried to shorten it even more and I just couldn't figure out how to do it. So
That's funny.
Yeah.
I think the movie is A River Runs Through It. And anyway, but in there, there's a scene where they're writing and they bring their writing to their dad and their dad says half as long and they go back and they write and every time they bring it back, it's half as long, half as long, half as long is like the refrain. And I think that's often the fight with fiction is like figuring out how far you can cut it until it is still interesting and has enough meat on the bones to get you through there. And it sounds like kind of your work. It sounds almost like the work of like an adaptation, right? Like you have this big thing
yeah.
and you're going through and you're going, okay, as an editor, as an interested party, what are the pieces here? But interesting.
Yeah,
I
that's
like that idea.
exactly right. I in learning about fiction and novels, there's the beginning and the middle and the point of no return and all this kind of stuff. I had a lot of trouble figuring that out. But one thing I did do is shorten things exactly like you're saying. And my expression to that was noun, verb, nothing
Yeah.
else, nothing else.
Yeah.
But I have to add one more comment to what you said. That is my hometown, Missoula, Montana, is where a river runs through it. And that's the University of Montana, where my father, who also served in the Army, that's where he taught for many years. So it's funny that you say that because
Wow.
that's where I'm from. That's where I grew up.
Small small world.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So is there a little part out of the book that you'd like to read us?
Oh,
Is there?
sure. Oh, sure.
Love to hear something.
I love that
So
you have
just
those other ones spiral bound from her. Like that's what a wonderful artifact.
Yeah.
I think sometimes of like the stories my parents and my grandparents have told me. I would love to have them written. And I often try to
you know,
capture and recreate those, but your mom saved you the time of like actually printing them
I
out for it.
know
Yeah.
I'm sure I couldn't have done it without her. So that's why, again, I feel sort of like an imposter, but at least I got it out there. One other
Yeah.
thing that I thought she did exceptionally well is dialogue that reflects the times. And some of the other novels I read now that are historical fiction, they can't capture it quite as well as if you were really there. So it really shows
Yeah.
through that she was really there.
That's
So
one of the real difficult tricks of historical fiction is trying to make your dialogue sound authentic to the time.
yeah,
Um, I write a little of that, and it is always a challenge
sure,
for
sure.
that.
So I do have a very short reading. What I've done is I've given a lot of presentations on this. And what I've done is given slideshows of various aspects where she is, and I have pictures. And then I do short readings, a number of them, and I call it In Her Words because what I found is veterans like to, or people like to hear directly from veterans. So that's why I use In Her Words. But just a little bit about it. She joins up in the Army. She's from a very wealthy family. She has graduated from Iowa State as a dietitian. She's interned at Cook County Hospital. And then, of course, as a dietitian, she joins up. She's going to make spam taste good. And that's her goal. So she
Well,
gets in
spam
there.
does taste good. I like
Well,
Yeah.
spam.
yeah, there you go.
I just
There you
had a
go.
spam sandwich the other day.
Did you
So,
really?
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, good. Well, anyway, she joins up and she's a little priss and she doesn't get along with her supervisor and she puts in for a transfer and she gets transferred overseas. So she is going overseas on a ship. There's 10 women and 3,000 men. It took 7 days. So I will read you this little excerpt. The girls were billeted at the Chateau des Mesnières. And in her words, this 15th century castle came with a 15th century heating system. Countless hours were spent attempting to fix the stoves, yet nothing worked. Not once in this time had Kathy been warm, despite wearing long woolen underwear under her pajamas. She even lined her cot with large paper bags. The only exception was a few minutes in the hot shower. However, by the time she had run back across the outside courtyard in the freezing cold with wet hair, she was thoroughly chilled again. The men from Camp Lucky Strike said they were rationed to one helmet full of coal a day. They spent their days huddled around stoves in their tents. When they came to visit, they declared the castle warm and the hot showers a downright luxury. On the front lines in the Battle of the Bulge, American soldiers had literally been freezing in their foxholes. And so it didn't occur to the girls to complain, but simply to shrug, c'est la guerre, it is war.
Nice.
Nice. I like it. I like it. So, how has the book been received? I mean, I know you've done several appearances and events, and tell us about the reaction to your book.
Oh, sure. It has been well received. I've got a number of places where I presented, some senior centers, YWCA. I'm going to be presenting at a high tea in Egan coming up.
Oh,
A
wow.
lot of women in particular like it. I would say women in their 90s in particular really like it. You can cut that
Sure.
out. I don't know how I said that. Anyway, women in their 90s especially like it. Men like it too. My husband really enjoyed it. He liked working on it with me. And it just gives a very unique women's perspective that you
Yeah.
just don't hear very often.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been refreshing and it's been fun. I've met a lot of veterans. I hear a lot of veteran stories. And it is kind of sad, though, I hear over and over people say, I wish my mother had written down or my father or whoever had
Yeah.
served.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, I enjoyed the book when I read it. So we must make a confession that I have actually interviewed Peggy before about this book. I found it to be fascinating. I found your mother to be a fascinating character. I I looked at it as somewhat of a memoir more than fiction, I guess.
Mhm.
So congratulations. It's a great read. I highly recommend it to everybody.
Well, thank you very much.
So
So you mentioned in there you enjoyed working on it with your husband. I'm curious about that collaborative nature. I mean, I know you had mentioned going on travels and things like that with him and doing research, but did he actually help with the writing and the editing and that kind of thing, or what was that
Well,
collaboration like?
he, as far as I can remember, he's been reading books and magazines about World War II. He likes especially tanks and airplanes and guns and all this kind of stuff. He knows an awful lot about World War II. One of the things that was lacking in the book is the exact timeline of the events that were occurring. She would put its day D69, which meant it's 69 days past D-Day.
Oh, okay.
So the reader doesn't know what's happening. So I would sit down with my husband and I say, okay, it's January 11th. There's planes in the air. What can we tell the readers about what's happening this day? And so we would discuss it and what might be happening and try to nail down the timeline and went with some of the clues that were in there. But he was a big help, and he was very helpful in that I couldn't get any of that wrong. I couldn't portray the soldiers in the wrong way or misrepresent anything. So that was very helpful. And so it was fun too, because we had a good time, I would say, collaborating on it. We didn't add a lot, but it was pretty important to add something because it was definitely lacking.
I love that. It's so interesting when you can. I love hearing those stories about how partners collaborate like that. And I know I think of Louise Erdrich and her husband Michael Doris or Michael Dorrit. I can't remember his last name now. And they used to literally like write each other's books kind of at the same time. And they talked about how collaborative that was and how even though one person's name got on there, it was really more of a shared kind of thing. And I think, this probably, I mean, you benefit from having somebody with that kind of expertise that you can kind of lean on for some of these pieces. And I know for me, like description is not something that I enjoy. So I would be the person cutting all that stuff you talked about that got hacked out, the descriptions of the barracks and whatnot. And my friend Heidi is often the one who puts it all back in when we collaborate on things. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things we do on these podcasts, Peggy, is to ask a series of questions that really don't have anything to do with writing. They're just rapid fire questions that will give our listeners and viewers, we hope, a little better insight into who you are and what makes you tick, and uh, and so here we go. We're going to do our what we call our lightning round.
Okay.
And so the first question, I'll steal one of Michael's regular questions. And so if you were going to invite us over for dinner, what's the best thing that you cook?
Well, I do like to experiment, but I wouldn't experiment on guests. I I don't like cooking meat for some reason, but I have all kinds of varieties on a grilled cheese sandwich, and I can make some really great grilled cheese sandwich. So it would be soup and sandwiches with chips, and I think you guys would be very happy with that.
We will wait for the invitation.
I love that. There was so I grew up in southeastern Michigan, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, right around there, basically. And there was a place called Drake's, which was a sandwich shop, and they had grilled cheese and limeade. Like those are really the only things on their menu. And the grilled cheese but it was grilled cheese, but then you could add anything they want that you had. So it was, you could add bacon, you could add tomato, you could add whatever, onions and all that stuff. And I loved that. That was one of my favorite places to go for lunches. It was incredible. So you got my number right there with grilled cheese sandwiches for sure. So
Yeah, it is probably my favorite stormy winter evening meal. Tomato
Okay.
soup and grilled cheese sandwiches.
So
wow.
good.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
no fail. I can make it.
Yeah,
Turn on
Yeah.
hands.
that's true.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to make it a sandwich podcast, but my favorite adult, like grown-up version of grilled cheese is like brie and like a Granny Smith apple, and then like some kind of like raspberry jam they put on there. Oh my God,
Mhm.
it's so good.
Mhm. Isn't that the
Anyway,
best? Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Anyway, next question.
Yeah.
Even though
Well,
we
we're going
weren't
to do a cooking show next week.
I
Yeah.
know. So I'm curious about early inspirations. So like if you think of like early books that you read that kind of stuck with you, that clearly didn't turn you into an author, but at least earlier than this book. But like, what were some of those early books that you were reading that inspired you as a young girl?
Well, I would have to say maybe Gone with the Wind, the movie and the book. I loved them both. The Thornbirds, I just couldn't put
Ooh.
down. And I guess I have to admit, when John Grisham came out with his first book, I bought it in an airport, and I was up half the night reading that thing. The Firm, I think you know that.
Yeah.
And so whenever he came out with a new book, I was in buying it. But generally, I didn't really read that much because I was just so busy working. But now I've been reading a lot, and I actually read a lot of nonfiction, much to my surprise.
Interesting.
Okay. So if there was one person that you could have a long leisurely lunch with, alive or dead, who would it be? Okay.
If I was able to do that in working with this, with my mother's story and learning more about it and thinking so much about it, I'd be curious to hear from my father about what was his experience in the war. He never said much of anything like so many people, and I would love to hear more about it. So that would be who I would like to spend some time with.
I
Nice.
love that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, he didn't write a book for you to help with that for
Mm.
sure. So that would be so like the writer in me is like, well, the obvious continuation is then like the father's story in the war. Even if there's no overlap really between the timeline there, like that perspective would be really interesting. So I was curious, I guess, about travels. I mean, you mentioned traveling and doing research and things like that. I'll kind of split the question. Favorite place that you've just vacationed or visited, and then the other version is what was the most interesting historical place that you went to, whether it was for research or enjoyment.
Okay, sure. I mentioned the Castle des Messniers, and that's where my mother had gotten really sick. We went to visit there. That was in France, and what was really fun about it was just so much more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. And then today, apparently, it's a home for young girls where they grow food in the gardens. They prepare the food and then they serve it in a restaurant. I could not
Wow.
believe how lovely this place was. And then to find out this was right next to where they were also shooting V1 and V2 rockets at the time of the war. I just can't imagine out of
Wow.
this idyllic place something like that happening. So that was really fun to see. I just couldn't believe it. Um, I guess another favorite place is we recently went to Berlin, and I really didn't know much of anything about the Cold War. It was fascinating to see the remnants of the wall and to hear about it. And that was just quite an education for me. So
Wow.
Hmm.
Cool.
Uh, so do you have a hobby?
I do. I like to cook. I like to experiment.
Oh, okay. We're all right. It's
Yep.
experimenting. Okay.
Yep. So
Um,
I picked that up from my mother. And so, yeah, with an emphasis on the experiment. Luckily, my husband will eat just about anything. So I'm kind of lucky there. And if all else fails, he gets out his bowl of Cheerios.
oh, I used to put on for charity auctions a Italian meal in your home for eight, and
Oh,
I'd experiment a lot with doing that, and we always had in our pocket two cans of Chef Boyardee,
sure,
spaghetti, just in case. We never
sure,
had to use it, but it was always there just in case.
sure.
So,
Well,
so
recently we went to Olive Garden because we're going to be going on a Italy trip this year with the World War II Roundtable. And I had their soup there. You'd like this, Rob. It was called chicken gnocchi. So when I got home, I found a knockoff recipe and I tried it, and it's just fabulous. I've probably made it 5 times since then. So
yeah,
it's been
good,
really fun to do that.
perfect.
Wonderful. Well, you mentioned reading a lot of nonfiction lately. I'm curious, what are some of your favorite topics or books that you've read recently?
Well, I tell you, I'm never going to tire of these World War II stories. I just cannot believe some of the things that I've read. Well, one of them I read recently. I didn't know much about the Pacific War, and I read a book called The Admirals, and that's about the five-star admirals from World War II, and all the way from birth to their whole career. And it's amazing. It's got the great things they did, and then some of the questionable things they did, and they sure portrayed them all as human, but also really, really great men. And so that was really fun to read. Um, I guess some of the other stories, I've got a whole pile of books here. Let's see, what have I got? The Correspondence. This is about some of the women writers on the front lines in World War II. I just picked this one up. And then recently, here's another one. Probably haven't seen this, the Devil Boats. Our recent topic for the student outreach session was the PT boats. And those little wooden boats with those torpedoes were pretty important in the war. So I'm always finding some of these stories, and I just don't get tired of them.
Did you ever, this is fiction, of course, but did you ever read Hemingway's Islands in the Stream?
No.
It is a story about a PT boat in the Caribbean looking for German submarines in
Oh
World
my
War
gosh.
II. And it is really a great book.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so Islands
Well,
in the
thank
Stream,
you.
it's called.
Okay.
And I highly recommend it. It
Thank you.
also
Well,
has one of the greatest chapters I have ever read anywhere in any book. They're not hunting submarines at this point in time. He and a couple buddies go marlin fishing on their time off, and they catch a 1,300-pound marlin, black marlin, and he describes the whole process from the time they hook the fish. And I realized halfway through the chapter as I was reading it, I was sweating. I was working so hard to catch the damn fish with him that I was sweating. It's one of the best pieces of writing I've ever seen in my life.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to catch that one. Thank you so much.
I'm picturing you holding the book and like fighting it.
Yeah.
Well,
So what's your favorite holiday?
what's my favorite holiday? Oh, Christmas for sure. I really
Okay.
do like Christmas. I like the decorations. I love the food, the music, all of it. So definitely.
I guess kind of two final questions are, do you have any events up and coming that we should be aware of? And then two, do you have any favorite bookstores that you'd like to recommend or give a plug for where people could find your books?
Okay. Well, can I add one more thing? Can I add one more thing? Oh, okay. Okay. So I grabbed this. This is on my shelf. This is a little wooden box. Now, I mentioned that my mother worked in a hospital in France, and the staff for the hospital was actually German POWs. And they really didn't talk to the German POWs. But when the war was over and it was ending, they actually had made this box for her. And all he had was a saw, a file, and a hammer. And it was a real surprise because they were monsters at the time. And so this was just part of her growth in the book. So I just had to show you that.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry. And what was the question? Some of the bookstores. Well, I really have enjoyed going around to some bookstores, and I really have taken a liking to some of the independent stores. And you can just get a different feel when you get in there, and they want to help you, and they support local authors. And
independent booksellers obviously are in need of all the help that they can get, and they are more than happy to reach out to independent authors, and particularly the ones who come from their area. So it's a good thing.
It's great. It's great. I'm glad they're still around.
Amen to that.
Us too.
Yeah, us too. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anything to do. This would be a podcast for mimes. You know. So, Peggy, thanks. We
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah,
Any
it was
questions
wonderful
for
meeting
us
you.
or anything you want to add before we wrap it up for the night?
Well, okay, I do have one more thing to add. So, when my mother was just 16, she actually went to the Olympics in Berlin as part of
Oh my
a
gosh.
German propaganda tour. And she went to something like 5 countries, and it was several weeks long. And when she was there, she took some videos. And so in at my website, there's actually a video, a shortened version, under 2 minutes, of some of the snapshots from what she took at the Berlin Olympics. It's kind of hard to see. It's home video. It's a 16-year-old girl 80 years ago. So, but it's there, and it says at the top, the video's not available, but it is. And so it's just a shortened version. So that's a little
Wonderful.
backdrop to her perspective on the whole war.
Your mother led quite the life. That was that alone is worth another book. I keep trying to get you to write another book.
Well, it might happen if I keep loving these stories, Rob, and I'm telling you, there's stories to be told.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I could say one other thing. People have said, "Oh, you should make a movie out of this," and so I did check in with a Hollywood producer, and they said, well, it doesn't quite have the elements of a movie with, again, the dramatic series of events. It's really somewhat required for a movie. And so I was telling my husband about that, and he goes, oh, so you just have to make stuff up? Is that right?
Pretty much,
that was the end. That was the end of that. There's not going to be a movie. It was good just to get the book out. So,
well, it is a great book, and I highly recommend it to everybody. So, and again, thank you, and really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Well, thank you.
And don't forget, you can see this book and more from Minnesota authors in the Bell Cow catalog, heading to libraries and indie bookstores across Minnesota and beyond.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bell Cow Author Roundup podcast. We'll be back next Tuesday with another amazing Minnesota author.